Oh, that moves. It's not going to explode, is it?
Yeah, that's how long you get to interview
That's
me.
it. Yeah, that's my time. Yeah, that's kind of good. So I wouldn't have to look at you then. You just look at that. Go. Done.
No, done, you're right.
There's a line that Benji says in the trailer, which is, "I find it best not to look."
Yes.
Is that for you as an actor? Was that kind of like a watchword in your head in terms of watching when you see Tom doing what he was doing? Because I've seen him go to the limit before, but this is just out of the stratosphere in some of this.
Oh, 100%. And that was a little meta thing going on there, because for us, actually, on that day, when Tom did the falling from the helicopter stunt, I remember Rebecca and I kind of just not being able to watch because it was very hairy. And a lot of the time, it is easier just to kind of go home and let him get on with it and hope that you don't get the call. It was nice to get a call saying it was just his ankle that he broke, you know.
I was going to say, you're waiting for the day where
you did?
get that text message.
It's worrying, and there's not a little trepidation, you know. There's always a slight sense of doom on set, you know. But here we are.
So, I mean, you had so much success with The Crown and won awards and everything else, but then you get a call from Tom Cruise. I mean, when you get the call, do you think someone's pranking me here?
Yeah, someone's taking the piss. It's my best friend being like, putting on a funny voice. No, it was all quite quick actually. The first season of The Crown come out, and both Tom and Chris had seen it, which is also really surreal. Thought they were taking the piss. And I met Chris and we chatted a bit, and he was like, "Look, I want to make this little part that's sort of dark and a bit weird, and would you fancy it?" And then I met Tom, and he said the same thing, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." So yeah, I suppose it was quite surreal, but then within the first day you sort of get used to it, and it just becomes like every other set, and it's all less weird.
Yeah. There's only so many times in a career that you get to revisit a character, so it must have been great to go back to Ilsa and to kind of peel the onion a bit more, and more layers with her and discover a bit more. It must have been fantastic to go back.
It was wonderful, and I didn't expect it because they hadn't really welcomed back any other of the characters previously except the core of them. But yeah, I think there's so many layers to it, as you said, and I think one of the main things that I love is coming back to the training and to be learning all of these incredible things that we learn and get to try out. And the locations and the team and, Peggsters.
Yeah, exactly.
Six-pack Pegg.
Six-pack Pegg.
Yeah.
Not just Cavill, six-pack Pegg. Love it. I know you said that you felt sorry for whoever took on number 6, and that ended up being you.
Yes.
What was your reaction when you got the call from Tom saying, "Hey, Chris, I think it might be you again"?
I did everything I could to talk him out of it. I said the thing that I was most concerned with, honestly, was that fans of the franchise have come to expect a different director every time. And I pointed out that precedent, and Tom said precedents are made to be broken. So I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do it, we need to maintain that aesthetic. It needs to feel like a different director. I need to do whatever I can to get as far away from Rogue Nation as I possibly can. And that's not to say I can completely remove my DNA, but I can make a different kind of movie. And I said, to that end, I want to make a darker movie. I want to make a more emotionally complex movie, a more emotional movie in general, and one that's more about Ethan as a person.
Did you take much influence from anybody else in terms of coming into this one? Because obviously, as you said, you kind of removed yourself from it. Did you take any kind of influence from any other directors or films?
Well, quite the opposite. I think I took a lot of influence from other directors on Rogue. I was having a fun time making little winks and nods and references and playing with Hitchcock, and which was a nod to De Palma. And on this one, I very deliberately did not do that. I did something that I think goes back more to my roots as a filmmaker. It was just a little grittier and a little rougher. Rob Hardy, the cinematographer, came to it with influences from things as diverse as The Thing and Point Blank. I'm a huge acolyte of Gordon Willis and his cinematography, so I think you see elements of that bleeding through.
In terms of writing Ethan, I mean, it is very much Ethan's story, but after so many movies, the character's obviously developed quite a lot. What was it that you wanted to add into this one?
Really, what I wanted to do was be more in his head. I wanted the audience to feel like they were with Ethan as opposed to trying to figure Ethan out, which is what the previous Mission movies had really been about. And when I asked Tom what he wanted to do, he said, I'm still being asked about Julia. That story is still out there, unresolved for people, and I want to resolve it. And I said, okay, I can do that, but that means I've got to reintroduce her character. You can't assume that people have seen the other movies or retained any of the story elements of those. We have to make this a standalone movie. And if that's the case, then the movie's going to start differently than an action movie normally does. And that's why the movie begins the way it does.
It's a fascinating character. I can imagine that when you read it for the first time, given that McHugh had written it. I keep calling him McHugh. Even though
I call him McHugh. No, shit. Call him McHugh. No.
Such a fascinating writer, and obviously did stuff like Usual Suspects and everything else. Knew that this was going to be so well written and such a great part to get your teeth into.
Do you know what? It wasn't written when we started.
Oh.
So we didn't know what it would be. And Tom and McHugh kind of work in this amazing way because they know each other really well. They've done 9 movies together, so it's sort of trust. And Mission, the narratives are so complicated, and there's always so many things at stake and so many people to factor in, and it's a big ensemble, always has been, with Ethan at the centre of it, accomplishing this mission. So they didn't really know what the narrative would be. They just knew the essences or the energies of people that they wanted to add to it, as well as the old ones like Benji and Rebecca and everybody. So all I knew was that she would run this like underground criminal network, that she was probably Vanessa Redgrove's daughter, and that she'd be meeting Tom in some way. And so there's lots and lots of different plans of her being a super villain throughout, having this big fight at the end, taking everyone down. And there was all these different incarnations of her. So I just got to go and play, really, and just, try and find someone unusual. And I was filming The Crown at the same time, so that was really challenging, because it was just like 2 completely different headspaces, and I wanted to make someone completely different. And they're sort of both in power as women, but they're just operating in completely different ways. But yeah, she's only sort of in the first third, like floating around Paris, and I just wanted to do something a bit strange with it. I don't know if it worked, but just gave it a go.
When you were creating the character of Walker, was Henry always in your mind, or did that just kind of come from...
Henry was, I will tell you the truth, Henry was always on my mind, and I did not bring him up. I had Henry in my pocket, and I suspected there might be some apprehension with him being Superman, and that would overshadow things. So rather than go right down the middle, I did a dance, and I went down certain roads that I knew we're never going to get this guy, and I exhausted everybody's desires for who they wanted this character to be. Before I finally said, hey, here's an idea. We've tried all of that, and now what if we try this? And by introducing that idea gradually, I didn't run into the fear of the Man of Steel. And there definitely was some. There was some apprehension at the beginning, but by that point, you got people to a place where they're starting to get a little desperate about who are we going to cast in this role. And the reason I cast him is I knew from having seen him in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., there was a sense of humor there that indicated right away this guy has a darker side that nobody has utilized yet, and I think it'll be really interesting to see him as something of a bad guy. And what I especially liked about him, was so physically imposing. I really wanted somebody who was a physical threat to Ethan, and I didn't quite know what his dynamic was going to be in the story. I had originally started with a different character entirely, and so it became an evolution. Walker was one thing on Monday, and another thing on Tuesday, and a third thing on Wednesday. And Henry was incredibly patient with me coming to work every day and saying, "Yeah, that thing I was talking about doesn't work anymore."
I spoke to Chris McQuarrie, and he said that when he was writing the script, he kind of thought of you, and that it would be a very interesting kind of different character for you to play. But then he wasn't sure because of the Superman connection and everything else. But for you, when you read this part, it must have been great that it was so different and very kind of alluring for you.
Absolutely. It wasn't necessarily a deliberate move, but I want to play something just on the other range of the spectrum. But it was the idea of working with McQuarrie and Cruise, and they're very good at filmmaking. And so when this character popped up and it was at the other end of the spectrum, it was even more exciting a prospect for me. And when the character started to evolve and get more complex as we went along throughout shooting, it just got better and better by the day.
I mean, there's so many of these kind of summer blockbusters that are so CGI heavy, but when you see this particularly on the IMAX, you see Tom hanging from a helicopter. You get your moment to throw down in it as well. When you see all these moments, when you see them as an actor and you've kind of removed yourself from it, but then when you see it, I mean, it must be so exhilarating for you, even though you've kind of lived it.
Yes, it is. And I watched the film on Monday in Paris, the first press screening, and Henry and Angela Bassett and myself sort of sat at the back, and it was extraordinary and amazing to see 144 days worth of shooting, compacted into 2.5 hours. It was a year for us, but into such a sort of cohesive and momentum-driven story. It was a real delight to see it all, finally come to life.
I always, whenever I go and see Tom in these mission movies, I always think, how's he going to top himself? And this one, I mean,
doesn't topping oneself mean killing oneself off?
Well, I mean, it's a double meaning
Was
with
that
Tom.
pun
Yeah, it was, in the sense that
How
I
is
felt
he
like
going to top himself
I don't
off?
want to ever read on the news. Like Simon Pegg was saying, I got a text saying he broke his ankle, and he thought, oh my God, just broke his ankle. But he's just so relentless in his pursuit of making these movies.
I know. And it's funny how, I mean, it's so silly. I said to Simon, and he breaks his foot doing a jump, and he goes, yeah, but do you know how high up he is? Yeah. That isn't a stunt anymore. In my head, I go, oh, he tripped and fell. It's like crossing the street. Because you expect something to happen when he's, piloting a helicopter upside down or scaling the world's tallest building or falling from the sky. Yeah. But I guess it's also what gives him the kick, gives that adrenaline and the rush, and it is phenomenal being a part of it. It's bloody fun.
Yeah. I love the clip of him, I think you were on Graham Norton, where the clip that he broke his foot is still in the movie, and he got up and carried on running past the camera.
But I think Simon said it so brilliantly. He said, and I think he might have said it to you, he said, he's an actor. He goes, actor, boom, producer.
Yeah.
When he hits his foot. He literally activates producer man who goes, I need to get the shot. I need to get the bloody shot. And he limps, and then he goes, did we get it? And then the rush of adrenaline kicks in, probably.
You have your own moments, and you get into a bit of a fisticuffs and everything else. But when Tom said to you, this is what we're going to be doing with the helicopter, and then you saw it for the first time, I mean, that must have been... I mean, it's incredible to watch on the IMAX, but when you saw it for the first time, you must have thought, that dude's crazy.
Yeah, I did. But, I remember quite early on, before we started filming, Mickey, I was in his office, and he was showing me simulations of what it would be, because they have to plan it. I mean, I don't even know how they do it. I was actually watching it last night thinking, I don't know how you would do this. I don't know how one does that. It completely blew my mind from all elements of it. But seeing the simulation, I was like, he's crazy. Like, how the hell is he going to do that? And he trained for 18 months, and then to do it with no one else in the helicopter, just him and the camera. I mean, that's like seriously endangering your life. So, yeah, he survived. Don't know how. I would be down in a minute. I mean, like less than that, 10 seconds.
How was it shooting on IMAX cameras? Because I know when Chris Nolan did Dark Knight, he was kind of the first kind of trendsetter to do it, and he found that he had to kind of go back to film school and learn different things. What was the most challenging thing about doing IMAX? Because it's very different than if you did it on 35 or 70 millimeter, I guess. Yeah,
well, in our case, the stuff that we did for IMAX, I don't know how nerdy the people are watching this. We didn't shoot on IMAX film cameras for a simple practical reason. We needed the lightest possible cameras because the two sequences that we were shooting were the helicopter sequence and the halo jump. The halo jump required an extremely small camera. It's mounted on the head of a skydiving cameraman. And the helicopters needed to have the lightest weight possible. And they also needed to be digital simply because we didn't have the ability to reload as often as we wanted to. We could put larger drives on the cameras and roll for much longer time because anytime you had to turn around to go back and reload the camera was enormously time consuming. So we ended up shooting digital and not IMAX film. I was very apprehensive about that because I'm a huge lover of film, and I was concerned that the change from one format to another was going to be too jarring, but it actually worked really well.
And there's so many amazing stunts in this movie. The thing I love about it is Tom and Chris are very keen on the realism and everything else. And you can see that there's one sequence where you're in a helicopter and you can see all your hair going, which is like, that's really real. There'll be people out there who probably say, oh, he's been Superman, he can do all this stuff. But actually, I can imagine Superman is very different to doing this because it's kind of make-believe in some ways.
Absolutely. There's a lot more in the way of CGI takeover fights because it's superpowers and people are doing superhuman things. And there's a lower level of stunts in the superhero movies, in the ones I've been in anyway. And this is all practical stunts and practical locations, and so the training required for it is extra months. It's wire work, it's rigs, it's being in helicopters. It's the kind of thing which Superman doesn't do. I don't think he would ever be in a helicopter, would he?
Well, no, that would be
unless it was Batman's helicopter. Yeah, just being
Batman's
polite.
Yeah, I mean that itself must give you such a great kind of platform to do different stuff because you're used to being superhuman, whereas in this it's like, right, I've got to proper get down and dirty with this one and do what Tom's doing.
Absolutely, and I loved it. I saw it as a wonderful opportunity to do this kind of stuff. I've always wanted to get stuck into the stunts and just stretch myself that way. And when I turned up on this set and spoke to Wade Eastwood, the second unit director and stunt coordinator, I said to him, look, put me in, coach, anything. I want to do it all. Always assume I'm going to say yes. And they did.
How infectious is it to be around Tom Cruise? Because he's such a professional, but also seeing him at the premiere, he wants to meet all the fans, he wants to do all of that. As an actor, when you're around him, he must be such a great kind of person to look up to because he's so professional, but also, I mean, he gets himself in there.
Yeah, he sets a wonderful example. What I'm taking from this movie especially is that physicality isn't just enough to get you through all the stunts and everything. There's a huge amount of skill sets that are required. And he set that example as a leader and set the bar so high that I now look at it and I've left this movie thinking I need to, in my own time, get a whole bunch of skills. Helicopter flying will be one of them. I got a motorcycle license on the job and by myself as well. It wasn't sort of part of the job because the one bit which required my motorcycle license was right at the beginning of the movie and I was kicking myself the entire time thinking I knew I should have got my license years ago and I didn't. Because I didn't think it was going to have a practical use in my profession. And now I know otherwise, and I've got the bug.
I've really enjoyed the evolution of Benji because he started out as this, you were in a couple of scenes in Mission Impossible 3 with JJ and behind a computer. Yeah. And now to go where he's gone is, I mean, some actors don't get to reprise characters. You've done it 4 times and he's getting more stuff to do every time.
The average lifespan of a field agent is not that long. So to become an agent and stay an agent for 4 films has been, for 3 films, has been really fun. And to play his evolution from kind of, nerdy tech to nerdy secret agent has been a real pleasure.
There's a fantastic camaraderie between you guys. And one thing that I know a lot of people will obviously say how great Tom is, but he's so good at comedy. And he's great in Tropic Thunder and a few other things. But in this, he's fantastic. And all of you guys was that kind of an improvised thing? Was he very open to improvising and stuff like that?
Tom likes playing. I mean, I think Tom, he's known for doing stuff like hanging out of helicopters and piloting them into tailspins and that, but he's also extremely good at playing vulnerable. Some of his best performances throughout his career have been when he's played not cocksure kind of maverick characters, but characters like Jerry Maguire, or even his character in Edge of Tomorrow, which is a sort of flawed coward at first, And in this film, Ethan is suffering a crisis of confidence about his life and about his work, and Tom lets that creep into that bravado in really nice, subtle ways, which just make Ethan feel so much more human. He's a kind of a superhero, Ethan Hunt. But in this respect, in this film, he's starting to doubt if that's the case, and even if he is, if he's any good at it,
The other thing I loved about this is that obviously you delve more into character, but more of her and Ethan. I think there's quite a big section of the fan base that was always kind of like willing you two to kind of be together, but also knowing that it probably wasn't written in the stars, maybe. I mean, did you feel that you were gonna? I know, right?
I think had they ended up together, it would have kind of killed the magic of what they are. The word lone wolf is such a boring term, but I'm going to use it because they are. They're quite lonely people within their brilliance, both of them. They obviously have their team and their collaboration, etc. But when they meet, there's such chemistry within their knowledge and their range of capacity. But also they have goals and they have their needs, but they will do anything to achieve it, even if it is breaking each other down. And it's kind of a love-hate relationship, which is really fascinating. Yeah. It's always what keeps people apart, even though there's that magnetic field between them.
Yeah. And you're well prepared for your next film, which I'm sure people have asked you already, to go and throw down with Jason Statham and The Rock. This is kind of a good audition, isn't it, for that?
Do you know what? It's not definite yet, so I can't say anyway because I'm not sure if it's gonna be able to work out date wise, but it's what I can say is I have never read such a fierce character in any of those kind of movies ever as a woman, and it's really exciting because I think it's so important for women to have to be the match for the man in these kinds of movies, particularly because it's always been male-led protagonists in these movies, and I've said quite a lot recently actually. I think that for little girls going to cinemas watching these kind of movies, how different they'll feel if they feel as a woman on screen that's absolutely as fierce as the men, if not more, in terms of whether it's action or anything. And I do you know what? I never imagined I'd be in action movies. I'm just not naturally that athletic or coordinated, for number one, and it wasn't a genre that I imagined that I'd be doing, but I understand the importance of, no matter what it is, whether it's stage or, The Crown was really, really profound for me because it was one of the first times that I played a proper protagonist on screen where the men were in a relationship to me, and that's not to say that it shouldn't be the other way around too, but I didn't realise how empowering it felt to have a fiancé join me as opposed to be someone's fiancé. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you understand actually the importance of subverting that and changing that as much as possible and representing that. That character takes everyone down around her, including Idris Elba.
And Idris as well.
Cool.
It's a good cast. Listen, thank you so much
Helen
for your
Mirren
time.
actually as well. So
it's a pretty good lineup. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh my.
Did you? I don't know if you noticed this, but maybe it's just me making it up. But there's a sequence in the movie where he jumps over a hedge, and it kind of reminded me of Shaun of the Dead, where you jump over the fences and everything. And it looks very similar. I just wondered whether that was something that you kind of knew about, or whether that's just me being a fanboy.
You've seeing connections that aren't there. Someone also says the greater good in this film. I said to McHugh, we take the mick out of that in Hot Fuzz. It's all
right. Just finally, I know I've asked you before about Star Trek. They've announced today that someone from Black Panther might be in Star Trek 4.
Really?
Denai Guerrero, who plays...
Oh, I love her. She's in The Walking Dead.
Woman. She's in talks, apparently.
Yeah.
Do you know if you're any closer? Because I know Zachary Quinto has said that you might be shooting very, very soon. You have got a director and new writers and everything.
S.J. Clarkson's coming tonight, so you can ask her.
That'll be good. I'll write that down.
She knows more than I do.
Are you hopeful, though? I can imagine, as you were so involved in the last one,
as
that
far
you
as I
get to do it
know,
again.
we're pushing ahead. We're in prep, I think, for it. So, but then there's so much to do before we actually start shooting, like making sure everybody is available. But that'd be great. That's a nice little bit of information. Thanks.
There we go. I'm the first person to tell you, man.
Yeah.
I guess if you were to do 7, I guess space for Tom Cruise. I'm trying to think
Low
what
Earth
else he could
orbit,
do.
at the very least. We wanted to see the curvature of the Earth in the Halo sequence, and we discovered just how high you have to go to do that, and it's much higher than 25,000 feet. And we were kind of disappointed. We're like, oh, God, I really wanted to see that. And Tom and I talk about it. We were talking about it last night, about a sequence like that. And he said, and this is what's great about Tom, he didn't say, oh, yeah, we've got to do that. He said, but why would I be there? Like, the challenge of these sequences is creating a realistic purpose for why he has to do the things that he does. So whatever happens in Mission 7, it's going to start there. It's going to start with what's a even remotely believable reason for putting this character in that situation.
Well, I hope you do it. I love the movie. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so
Absolute
much.
pleasure.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much. Just finally, I wanted to ask you about, they've just announced that you might be in the Shining sequel, Doctor Sleep, with Ewan McGregor, which is fascinating because I'm such a huge fan of The Shining. It's a long time, but...
It's fascinating. It's an interesting word you use.
Yeah, it's
bloody
fascinating
terrifying, isn't it?
I mean, you've obviously read the scripts and stuff. Is it something that The Shining fan... Obviously, it's been a long time, but there's so much excitement now that we're getting...
Do you know what? It is a great script. And Mike Flanagan is a fantastic director, and he has cast very well. For me, we've just started this production, so we haven't really. I'm diving into my character and finding out little things that I want to do, and just sort of what kind of a hat do I want? You know, she's called Rose the Hat, but I want to see it, and I see it as a separate entity to The Shining. I don't want people to see that it's a continuation. They do go in line. There are lots of resembling milieus, which is bloody exciting for me. Not to spoil anything, but they are separate as well. And he wrote it 2013, I think.
Oh, wow.
So
Very
it's a new
excited for
film,
that.
yeah.
I have to ask you about Superman. I mean, I'm such a huge fan of Man of Steel. And then, obviously, I think you said, you would love to go back and do a sequel because it kind of changed to Batman, Superman, everything else. I'm sure you don't know, but are you keen to revisit Superman in his own world, do a Man of Steel sequel if you can, revisit him and Lois and everything else? Because I think there's so many people out there that want to see another Superman movie.
I would love to make a Superman movie, absolutely. I would love to draw from all of my favourite comic books and make an original story there which is based in the essences of those characters, and have that joyful, hopeful, powerful figure who Superman is, and not just like the chocolate box sort of, saving kittens and stuff. A little bit of that, absolutely, but also the badass version of Superman. The Superman who you see his raw power, not necessarily unleashed in a negative way, but you see it in the protection of other people. And that's the kind of stuff I would love to do. Yes, I could wax lyrical. I will calm down.
Yeah, there's a huge fraction of the fan base who saw do these kind of reaction videos to the trailer and see you doing your cocking your fingers and everything else. People excited to see you doing that, but also a lot of people reacting is like, oh, where's that Superman? I want to see that Superman. Not in the sense of him going around and being evil, but just that, as you say, that power. So it must be great to hear that people actually want to see you do what you want to do. Yeah,
it absolutely is, and it's very encouraging, and it would be wonderful to get the opportunity.
I hope you do.
Thank you.
Very excited. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey